Ambassador Roll had been speaking for 20 minutes about trade routes and tax agreements. His voice droned through the massive council chamber like background noise. 200 species sat in their designated pods, most of them barely listening. This was routine. This was politics. Nothing ever changed in the Galactic Council. Then every screen went dark. The chamber lights flickered once. Emergency systems activated across Station Heliomar, painting the walls in soft red warning colors. Ambassador Rule stopped mid-sentence, his translator device clicking uselessly as he searched for words that would not come. High Chancellor Morith rose from his central throne. The Sindari leader was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. He had served on this council for over a century. He had seen wars begin and end. He had witnessed the fall of smaller civilizations and the rise of new ones. Nothing surprised him anymore, until now. "Report," he commanded. His voice carried across the silent chamber that a young monitoring corps officer named Tilla worked frantically at her station. Her forearms moved across the controls in a blur. "Chancellor, we have a vessel. It exited hyperspace at the outer boundary. But the readings cannot be correct." "Show me." The main display activated. Every ambassador in the chamber looked up. For a long moment, nobody understood what they were seeing. The scale made no sense. 11 kilometers, Tilla said. Her voice had become very small. "The vessel measures 11 kilometers in length." Whispers spread through the chamber. The largest warship in the Council fleet was the Sindari flagship, measuring just under 4 kilometers. No species in the known galaxy built anything larger. The engineering challenges alone made it impossible. The resource requirements would bankrupt entire systems. "Energy signature?" Morith asked. "It would power a small moon, Chancellor. Perhaps a large one." "Identification?" Tilla's hand stopped moving. She read the data 3 times before speaking. "Human registry. The vessel identifies itself as UES Prometheus." The whispers died. The silence that followed was absolute. Humanity. That troublesome species from the restricted sector. They had achieved faster-than-light travel barely 200 years ago. They bred like insects and expanded like a disease. The Council had voted to contain them 40 years prior, establishing the boundary line to stop their spread. They were confined to a small cluster of systems, forbidden from expanding further. They were supposed to be primitive. Controlled. Contained. Ambassador Drell of the Velthary felt something cold move through his chest. He was the oldest member of the Council now, older even than Morith. He remembered the vote. He remembered being the only one to oppose it. He remembered a human woman named Patricia Walsh standing in this very chamber, receiving the verdict that would cage her entire species. She had not argued. She had not threatened. She had simply nodded and said, "We understand. We will remember this." Drell had never forgotten the calm in her eyes. "How is this possible?" Morith demanded. "Our monitors watch their space constantly. We would have detected construction of this scale." "The vessel did not originate from monitored space," Tilla reported. "It came from beyond the boundary line, from the direction of the Galactic Rim." More whispers. The Galactic Rim was empty. Dead space. Nothing existed out there except old stars and older mysteries. Why would humans build a ship there? What had they been doing all these years? A new signal flashed across the display. "Incoming transmission." "Let us hear it," Morith commanded. The voice that filled the chamber was human. Female. Calm in a way that reminded Drell of Patricia Walsh 40 years ago. "Galactic Council, this is UES Prometheus. We request an audience to discuss 2 matters. The first is the boundary line. The second is the Harawak situation. We await your response." The transmission ended. Drell watched the color drain from Chancellor Morith's face. He watched the same terror spread across the chamber like a wave. The Harawaks. A name that had not been spoken in this chamber for 300 years. A name the Council had buried along with the memory of the Pelorian Empire. The Pelorians had been a great civilization once. Then the Harawaks came. Within a single generation, nothing remained. No survivors. No refugees. No records of what had happened or why. The Harawaks had retreated to the Galactic Rim afterward, and the Council had decided to never speak of them again. To pretend the threat did not exist. To hope that silence would equal safety. Now a human warship sat at their border, a vessel that dwarfed anything they could field, asking about a nightmare they had spent centuries trying to forget. "Chancellor," a Greenix ambassador called out. What are the Harawaks? Morith did not answer. He stood frozen at his throne, staring at the display where the Prometheus hung like a metal moon against the stars. Ambassador Drell rose slowly from his pod. His old joints ached. His heart beat too fast. But someone had to speak. The Harawaks, he said, are the reason the Pelorian Empire no longer exists. And apparently, the humans have been preparing for their return while we pretended they were not real. The Prometheus began to move, heading toward them, heading toward a council that had no answers and no options. The silence grew heavier. 40 years earlier, this same chamber had felt smaller. Ambassador Drell remembered standing at his pod, watching the debate unfold. Humanity had been the topic then, just as they were now. But back then, the council had not been afraid. Back then, they had been annoyed. They have colonized 17 systems in 180 years, Chancellor Yulis had announced. The Sindari leader of that era spoke with disgust dripping from every word. Their population doubles every 30 years. Their technology improves at a rate we cannot predict. They are a threat. A threat to whom? Drell had asked. They have shown no aggression. They trade fairly. They honor their agreements. For now, Yulis waved a dismissive hand. They are young. They are emotional. They are violent by nature. Look at their history. They spent thousands of years killing each other before they ever reached space. Do you truly believe they will behave differently once they outnumber us? The vote had been called. Contain humanity. Establish the boundary line. Restrict their expansion to their current systems. If they protested, remind them that they were one species against 200. Drell had voted against it. He was the only one. Ambassador Patricia Walsh had entered the chamber to receive the verdict. She was a small woman by human standards, with gray hair and steady eyes. She had listened without expression as Yulis explained the council's decision. Her species would not be permitted to expand further. Any attempt to cross the boundary line would be considered an act of war. Walsh had nodded once. We understand. We will remember this. She had walked out without another word. No threats. No anger. No promises of revenge. Just that simple acceptance that had haunted Drell ever since. Now, in the present, he stood in the same chamber watching the same fear he had felt that day spread across every face around him. We need to see the historical files, someone demanded. What do we actually know about the Harawaks? Morith hesitated. The information was classified at the highest level. Only the Chancellor and a handful of senior officials had access. But secrecy seemed pointless now. He authorized the release. The display filled with data that most of the Council had never seen. The Pelorian Empire had spanned over 400 systems. They were an advanced civilization, older than most species in the current Council. 300 years ago, something had emerged from the galactic rim. The Pelorians called them Harawaks, though no one knew if that was the creature's actual name. The war lasted 11 years. The Pelorians threw everything they had against the invaders. It was not enough. System after system fell silent. Colonies went dark. Fleets disappeared. By the end, not a single Pelorian survived. Their entire species, their entire civilization, simply ceased to exist. Then the Harawaks retreated. They returned to the rim and vanished. No explanation. No communication. Just silence. The council of that era had debated what to do. Send scouts? Prepare defenses? In the end, they chose neither. They buried the records. They stopped speaking the name. They convinced themselves that if they ignored the threat, it would remain gone forever. 32 years ago, Intelligence Chief Rena reported, reading from newly declassified files, a human exploration vessel crossed the boundary line in an unmonitored sector. They encountered something. We assumed they were destroyed. But they were not destroyed, Drell said quietly. Were they? No, Ambassador. According to these files, they survived. They captured a Harawak scout vessel. They studied it. They sent reports back to human space. Rena paused. The council suppressed this information. Leadership at the time decided it was better to maintain the belief that the Harawaks were gone. Morith closed his eyes. Who authorized the suppression? You did, Chancellor. 32 years ago. The chamber fell silent again. Every eye turned to Morith. The Chancellor had been in power for a very long time. Long enough to bury secrets. Long enough to forget them. On the display, the Prometheus continued its approach. 6 hours until arrival. 6 hours until a species they had caged came to discuss a threat they had hidden. Drell thought about Patricia Walsh. He thought about her steady eyes and her simple words. We understand. We will remember this. The humans had remembered. They had spent 40 years behind the boundary line, confined and restricted, and they had used that time to prepare for a war the Council refused to acknowledge. What do they want? A young ambassador asked. Are they coming to punish us? Drell shook his head slowly. If they wanted punishment, they would not have warned us. They would not have asked for an audience. They would have simply let the Herowax come. Then what do they want? Drell looked at the Prometheus on the display. 11 kilometers of metal and power, built in secret, approaching a station full of beings who had wronged them. I think, he said, they want to give us a chance we do not deserve. The chamber waited. The Prometheus drew closer. And somewhere in the galactic rim, something ancient was waking up. Fleet Admiral Gorix had served in the Sindari military for 47 years. He had fought in border conflicts, pirate suppression campaigns, and one brief war against the Velthri that everyone preferred to forget. He considered himself a practical officer. He followed orders. He did his duty. Today, his duty was to stop an 11-kilometer warship with 12 vessels that suddenly felt very small. All ships formed blockade pattern. He commanded from the bridge of his flagship, 300 kilometers from Station Heliomar. Weapons charged, but not locked. We are here to intercept, not attack. His fleet moved into position. 12 warships, the finest the Council could field. Together, they represented the combined military might of the Sindari Collective. Against most enemies, they would be overwhelming. The Prometheus continued its approach without slowing down. Incoming vessel. Gorix transmitted on an open channel. This is Fleet Admiral Gorix of the Council Defense Force. You are entering restricted space. Halt your approach immediately, or we will be forced to respond. Silence. The Prometheus did not change course, did not reduce speed, did not acknowledge the transmission in any way. Admiral, his sensor officer reported, the human vessel is not raising shields. It has not armed weapons. It appears to be ignoring us entirely. Repeat the warning. He did. The Prometheus still did not respond. Gorix felt sweat forming on his scales. His orders were clear. If the human ship did not stop, he was to fire. Chancellor Morith had been very specific about this. No exceptions. No negotiations. Stop them or destroy them. All ships, charge main weapons. Prepare firing solutions. His fleet obeyed. 12 warships powered their primary batteries. Targeting systems locked onto the approaching vessel. Gorix watched his display, waiting for the Prometheus to react. Surely now they would stop. Surely now they would take the threat seriously. Instead, the Prometheus sent a data transmission that IT arrived on every ship in the blockade simultaneously. It filled their tactical displays with information that made Gorix's blood run cold. The transmission contained the Prometheus's own assessment of the engagement. Firing solutions for every ship in his fleet, calculated to exploited structural weaknesses his engineers did not even know existed. Crew locations, identified by heat signature and movement patterns. Projected casualties, 4,847. Estimated battle duration, 14 seconds. Human casualties, 0. Admiral, his weapons officer said, voice trembling. They have not powered their main batteries. This assessment was generated using only secondary systems. Gorix stared at the data. The humans had not threatened them. They had not boasted or made demands. They had simply shown him, in precise mathematical terms, exactly what would happen if he gave the order to fire. They had done it almost casually, the way a teacher might correct a student's arithmetic. 14 seconds. His entire fleet. Gondot he thought about his crews. Thousands of officers and soldiers who trusted him to lead them wisely. They had families. They had lives waiting for them back home. They were not prepared to die for a blockade that could not succeed. Gorix made a decision that would end his career. All ships, stand down. Power down weapons. Form escort formation. Admiral, his first officer looked stunned. Our orders were to stop them. We cannot stop them. So we will escort them to the station and let the politicians sort out what happens next. I will not spend the lives of my crews to prove a point that is already lost. His fleet obeyed. Slowly, reluctantly, weapons powered down. The blockade became an honor guard. The Prometheus sailed through them without comment, without acknowledgement, as if the entire confrontation had been a minor inconvenience in the council chamber. Chancellor Morith watched the scene unfold with barely contained fury. Arrest him. The moment he docks, arrest Admiral Gorix for disobeying direct orders. Chancellor, Ambassador Drell said quietly. Perhaps we should focus on the humans who are now docking at our station. The Prometheus had arrived. Its shuttle bay opened, and a small craft emerged. It carried 3 passengers towards Station Heliomar's main hangar. 3 humans, coming to speak to a council that had spent 40 years trying to forget they existed. The shuttle landed. The doors opened. The woman who emerged first was 73 years old by human standards. Her hair was white, her face lined with age, but she moved with the confidence of someone who had already won every battle that mattered. She wore a simple uniform bearing the rank of Admiral. Sandra Cole walked into the council chamber like she belonged there. Behind her, 2 aides carried data tablets. Nothing else. No weapons. No guards. Just 3 humans facing 200 species who had caged their kind. Chancellor Morith rose to speak, to demand explanations, to assert the council's authority. Admiral Cole spoke first. 40 years ago, you caged us. 28 years ago, we met the Herowax. We have been preparing ever since. She paused, letting her words settle over the silent chamber. Now they are coming, and you have a choice to make. Admiral Cole activated her data tablet. The council chamber's main display filled with information that made ambassadors gasp and whisper in fear. 28 years of intelligence, she said. Everything we know about the Herowax. Everything the council buried and forgot. The images were horrifying. The Herowax were not a species in any familiar sense. They were a swarm. Billions of organisms acting with a single purpose, consuming everything in their path. Biological material, organic matter, living beings. All of it became fuel for their expansion. When our exploration vessel crossed the boundary line 32 years ago, they found a Herowax scout. Our people should have died. Instead, they captured it. They brought it back. They studied it for 4 years before the council learned of their discovery and suppressed the information. Chancellor Morith shifted uncomfortably. That suppression was necessary. We could not allow panic to spread. You could not allow truth to spread, Cole corrected. There is a difference. She continued her presentation. The Herowax had not retreated after destroying the Pelorians. They had paused. They had been preparing, building, waiting. The Pelorian Empire was never their target. It was their test. A calibration exercise to measure the galaxy's ability to resist. The real harvest was always scheduled for later, Cole said. Our captured scout contained data projections. The Herowax are coming. 17 months from now, they will enter council space with a fleet numbering in the thousands. 17 months? A Grinix ambassador asked. That is not much time. No, it is not. Cole displayed stellar cartography, showing the Herowax approach vector. Their path would take them through the heart of council territory. Every major system, every populated world, lay directly in their way. They do not negotiate, Cole continued. They do not occupy. They consume. Every organic species they encounter becomes raw material for more Herowax. The Pelorians numbered in the trillions. It took the swarm 11 years to devour them all. The council has approximately half that population. Do the math. The chamber fell silent. 200 species, countless worlds, trillions of lives. All of it facing extinction. What do you want from us? Morith asked finally. Cole smiled without warmth. We want an alliance. Full cooperation against the Herowax. Human technology and tactics shared freely with council forces. Joint command structure. Combined fleet operations. We have spent 28 years developing weapons specifically designed to counter Herowax biology. We will share everything. And in return, the boundary line falls. Humanity rejoins the galactic community as equals. No more restrictions. No more containment. Full membership with full rights. Morith's face hardened. You are using this crisis to escape the restrictions we placed on your species. You manufactured this entire situation. We manufactured nothing, Chancellor. The Herowax exist whether you believe in them or not. They are coming whether you prepare or not. We are offering you survival. The price is admitting that containment was wrong. This is extortion. Cole shook her head. Extortion would be letting you die and taking your systems afterward. We could do that. The Herowax will weaken your defenses. They will scatter your fleets. When the dust settles, Human space would be the only organized power remaining. We could expand without opposition into whatever territory survives. She paused, letting the implications sink in. Instead, we are here, asking for an alliance, offering to fight beside species who caged us for 40 years. That is not extortion, Chancellor. That is mercy you have not earned. Ambassador Drell rose from his pod. His old voice carried across the chamber. Admiral Cole, may I ask a question? Of course, Ambassador. What happens if we refuse? If the Council votes against alliance and the Herowax reach our space? Cole's expression did not change. Then you die? All of you. And afterward, we fight them alone. We always expected to. We have prepared for that possibility for 28 years. The Prometheus and her 11 sister ships were built to defend human space against the swarm. We hoped you would join us. We never required it. The weight of her words pressed down on the chamber. 12 Titan-class vessels, built in secret, built for a war humanity expected to fight without allies. The Prometheus will remain at Station Heliomar for 72 hours, Cole announced. After that, we return to human space to continue our preparations. You have until then to decide. She turned and walked toward the exit. Her aides followed. At the door, she paused and looked back at the silent chamber. 40 years ago, you decided humanity was too dangerous to be free. You were afraid of what we might become. I hope that fear serves you well now, because what we became is your only chance. She left. The chamber remained silent. 72 hours to decide the fate of the galaxy, and somewhere in the galactic rim, the swarm was already moving. The 72 hours became a political nightmare. Factions formed within minutes of Admiral Cole's departure. The Velthari and Greenix immediately announced support for the alliance. They had seen the data. They understood the math. Pride meant nothing against extinction. Chancellor Morith led the opposition. The Sindari Collective and their allies refused to accept humanity's terms. Accepting the alliance meant admitting the boundary line was a mistake. It meant acknowledging that the Council had imprisoned an innocent species for 40 years while ignoring a real threat. It meant admitting fear had driven their decisions. We cannot trust them, Morith argued in closed session. This is exactly what they wanted. They manufactured this crisis to escape containment. They manufactured a fleet of 12 Titan-class warships, Ambassador Drell replied. They manufactured 28 years of intelligence. They manufactured weapons we cannot understand. If they wanted to harm us, they would not need the Herowax as an excuse. The debate continued. Hours passed. The deadline approached. In a private chamber far from the council floor, Ambassador Drell requested a meeting with Admiral Cole. She agreed. They sat across from each other at a small table. Two old people, representing species that had spent decades on opposite sides of a barrier. I voted against containment, Drell said. 40 years ago, I was the only one. I know. We have records of that vote. For what it is worth, I am sorry. One vote would not have changed the outcome, but still, I am sorry. Cole studied him for a long moment. Ambassador, we do not blame individuals. The council acted as a collective. The responsibility is shared. Do you blame us at all? Cole leaned back in her chair. In the beginning, yes. There was anger. There was talk of revenge. But the boundary line gave us something unexpected. It gave us focus. We could not expand outward, so we expanded inward. We improved ourselves. We built ships we never would have built if we had easy access to new territory. She smiled slightly. In a strange way, your cage saved us. When we met the Herowax, we were ready to learn from them. If we had been scattered across 100 systems, comfortable and complacent, we would have died like the Pelorians. Drell absorbed this. And now? What do you feel now? Now I feel tired. I have spent my entire career preparing for a war I hoped would never come. I have watched 3 generations of human children grow up knowing that extinction waited beyond the rim. We are ready to fight. We are not sure we can win. But you came here anyway. You offered to share your preparations with species who wronged you. Because we are not fighting for revenge, Ambassador. We are fighting for survival. Yours and ours. The Herowax do not care about borders or politics or old grudges. They see the galaxy as food. The more of us that stand together, the better our chances. Their conversation was interrupted by urgent news. Intelligence Chief Rena burst into the chamber with data that changed everything. Admirals, Ambassador, we have new sensor readings. The Herowax have accelerated. They are not 17 months away. They will reach Council space in 11 weeks. Cole's face went pale. That is not possible. Our projections, the projections were based on their historical speed. They have tripled their approach velocity. Something has changed. 11 weeks. Not enough time to debate. Not enough time for politics. Not enough time for pride. Cole stood. I need to contact the Prometheus. We need to update our battle plans. Admiral, Drell said, what does this mean for the Alliance? It means the Council no longer has 72 hours. They have maybe 12. After that, every day spent arguing is a day lost preparing. The math does not care about politics. She left the chamber. Drell followed more slowly, his old legs struggling to keep pace with the sudden urgency. In the main council chamber, the news spread like fire. 11 weeks. The Herowax would arrive before most species could even evacuate their outer colonies. There would be no time for defensive preparations, no time for fleet coordination, no time for anything except choosing sides. Admiral Gorix, still technically under arrest, requested permission to address the council. To everyone's surprise, Morith allowed it. I have toured the Prometheus, Gorix announced. I have seen their weapons, their crew, their preparations. I have served in the Sindari fleet for 47 years. I have never seen a military force so ready for war. These humans have spent decades building an army to fight an enemy we refuse to acknowledge. Now that enemy is 11 weeks away. He turned to face Morith directly. Chancellor, I disobeyed your orders because I knew my fleet could not win. I accept any punishment you choose to give. But I am begging you now, do not let pride destroy us. Vote for the Alliance. Give us a chance. The chamber waited. The deadline had arrived early. The universe did not care about schedules. Morith stood alone at his throne, surrounded by silence, facing a choice that would determine whether his species lived or died. The vote was called at midnight station time. 200 species. 200 voices that would determine the future of the galaxy. Admiral Cole stood at the edge of the chamber, watching, waiting. She had done everything she could. The rest was up to them. The Velthari voted first. Yes. The Grenics followed. Yes. One by one, species cast their decisions. The count climbed steadily in favor of alliance. But the Sindari bloc remained silent, waiting for their chancellor to speak. Morith rose from his throne. The chamber fell quiet. Everything depended on his next words. I was wrong. The simple statement echoed through the silence. Morith continued, his voice heavy with something that might have been shame. 40 years ago, I supported containment because I was afraid. Not afraid of what humanity might do, but afraid of what they represented. They grew too fast. They adapted too quickly. They made us feel small and slow and old. So we caged them. We told ourselves it was for safety. It was for pride. He turned to face Admiral Cole directly. We imprisoned your species for a generation. We ignored warnings that could have saved millions of lives. We buried the truth about the Herowax because facing it would mean admitting we were not as powerful as we believed. Every one of those choices was mine. I authorized them. I defended them. I was wrong about all of it. Cole did not speak. She simply waited. The Sindari collective votes yes, Morith announced. Full alliance. Full cooperation. Whatever you need, we will provide. The remaining species followed quickly. The final count was unanimous. For the first time in the Council's history, every member voted as one. Cole stepped forward to address the chamber. Thank you. I know this was not easy. I know trust does not come naturally after everything that has happened. But we do not have time for old wounds. The Herowax are 11 weeks away. We need to begin immediately. She activated her data tablet, projecting plans across the main display. We need shipyards converted to produce human weapon designs. We need the Velthari to share their sensor technology with our fleet. We need the Grenics mining operations redirected to provide raw materials. We need every military vessel in Council space equipped with anti-Herowax modifications within 6 weeks. That is impossible, someone protested. The logistics alone. The Herowax do not care about logistics, Cole interrupted. They will arrive in 11 weeks whether we are ready or not. We make do with what we can accomplish, and we accept that some systems will fall before we can defend them. This is not a war we win cleanly. This is a war we survive. The chamber absorbed this grim truth. Admiral Gorix stepped forward. I volunteer to serve as council liaison to the human fleet. I have seen their capabilities. I can help coordinate our forces with theirs. Cole nodded. Accepted. Report to the Prometheus at 0600. We have work to do. The chamber erupted into activity. Ambassadors contacted their home systems. Military commanders began coordinating. Logistics officers started calculating resource requirements. The alliance had begun. Outside, the Prometheus prepared to depart. Its mission was complete. The vessel would return to human space and bring back the rest of the fleet. 11 more Titan-class warships. And behind them, the full military strength of a species that had spent 40 years preparing for this moment. Ambassador Drell stood at the observation deck, watching the great ship pull away from the station. Admiral Gorix joined him. Do you think we can win? Gorix asked. Drell considered the question carefully. 40 years ago, we saw humanity as a threat because they grew too fast and dreamed too boldly. We tried to cage them. Instead, we gave them a reason to become exactly what we feared, a military power beyond anything we could imagine. He watched the Prometheus shrink into the distance. Now that same species stands between us and extinction. I think the Herowax have no idea what they have awakened. Humanity did not build those ships to defend themselves. They built them to defend everyone, even the species who wronged them. What? Gorix asked. After everything we did, why would they help us? Drell smiled sadly. Because that is who they are. They are emotional. They are unpredictable. They remember every wrong done to them. But they also cannot watch others suffer without acting. It is their greatest weakness and their greatest strength. We called them dangerous because we did not understand them. Far away, in human space, 11 ships identical to the Prometheus powered up their drives. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Captain William Okafor received the transmission, Alliance confirmed. Full mobilization authorized that he keyed the fleet-wide channel. His voice reached every human warship, every crew member, every soldier who had spent their lives preparing for this moment. All ships, this is Defiance. The galaxy just remembered we exist. 40 years ago, they called us a threat. Today, they call us allies. Tomorrow, they will call us something else. The species that stood against the swarm when no one else could. He paused, looking at the stars filling his view screen. Let us make sure the Herowax never forget what humanity can do. 12 Titan-class warships turned toward Council space. Behind them, the full might of humanity followed. Ahead of them, the swarm was coming. The war for the galaxy had begun.